Elvis stopped singing mid-sentence, called a woman onto the stage, and then broke down crying uncontrollably. In that moment, 23,000 people at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis witnessed something that would haunt them forever. The king of rock and roll, the man who commanded stages like a god, crumbled like a child. But what that grieving mother whispered in his ear that night would change Elvis Presley forever. It was August 16, 1977. Elvis was performing what would unknowingly become one of his final concerts. The arena was electric, packed wall-to-wall with fans who had traveled from across the country to see their hero. The opening chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love" had just begun when Elvis noticed her in the third row. Margaret Williams sat motionless while everyone around her swayed and sang. Her eyes, red and swollen from crying, were fixed on Elvis with an intensity that cut through the sea of screaming fans. She clutched something small and white against her chest, a folded piece of paper that she held like a lifeline. Elvis had performed this song thousands of times, but something about Margaret's stillness in the chaos made him pause. He'd learned to read his audience like a book, and this woman's pain was screaming louder than any fan's excitement. The band continued playing, waiting for Elvis to sing the opening verse, but instead, he walked to the edge of the stage. 23,000 people fell silent as their idol broke protocol. Security guards tensed, unsure what was happening. "Ma'am," Elvis spoke into the microphone, his voice cutting through the silence. "Ma'am in the blue dress, third row. Would you come up here?" But what happened next would leave everyone in that arena questioning everything they thought they knew about fame, grief, and human connection. Subscribe now because what you're about to witness shows the real man behind the legend, and the moment that broke him. Margaret hesitated, her hands trembling. The spotlight found her, and the crowd began to whisper. Who was this ordinary-looking woman in her 50s? Why had Elvis stopped his concert for her? "Please," Elvis said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I can see you're hurting. Come on up here with me." Security helped Margaret climb onto the stage. She moved slowly, as if in a dream, still clutching that piece of paper. When she reached Elvis, he gently took her hands in his. "What's your name, darling?" he asked, turning off his microphone so only she could hear. "Margaret Williams," she whispered. "I'm from Jackson, Tennessee." Elvis studied her face, the deep lines of grief, the exhaustion that comes from weeks of sleepless nights. He'd seen that look before, in his own mirror during his darkest days. "You lost someone," he said. It wasn't a question. Margaret nodded, unable to speak. She unfolded the piece of paper she'd been holding. It was a letter, worn from being read countless times. "My boy, Tommy," she finally managed. He was 22. Car accident 3 weeks ago. Her voice broke. "This was his last letter to me before he went to Vietnam. He loved you so much, Mr. Presley. Your music got him through the war." Elvis felt something shift inside his chest. The arena around them seemed to disappear. 23,000 people might as well have been ghosts. Behind the scenes, Elvis's manager Colonel Parker was furious. This wasn't planned. This wasn't profitable. But Elvis didn't care about anything except the woman standing before him. Margaret continued, her voice barely a whisper. "In this letter, Tommy wrote about seeing you in concert in '75. He said it was the happiest night of his life. He wrote that your music reminded him there was still beauty in the world, even after everything he'd seen." She looked up at Elvis with tear-filled eyes. "I came here tonight because I wanted to feel close to him somehow. I wanted to understand what made him so happy." Elvis's throat tightened. His own son, if he'd had one, would have been around Tommy's age. The wars, the pain, the young men who never made it home, it all crashed over him like a wave. What did he want to be? Elvis asked gently. "A teacher," Margaret smiled through her tears. "He wanted to teach music to children. Said he was going to start a school program teaching kids to play guitar, just like you taught him through your records. That's when Elvis broke. Not the polished breakdown of a performer, but the raw, ugly crying of a man who'd carried too much pain for too long. His shoulders shook as tears streamed down his face. The arena was dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. They were witnessing something sacred. Elvis pulled Margaret into a gentle embrace. "Your boy," he whispered, his voice cracking, "your beautiful boy is still teaching. He taught me something tonight." But the moment that would define this encounter, and change Elvis forever, was still coming. Comment below if you think you know what happened next, because this story gets even more incredible. Elvis wiped his eyes and looked out at the 23,000 people watching in stunned silence. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight it had never held before. "Folks, I need you to understand something. This beautiful lady just lost her son. His name was Tommy, and he loved music more than anything in this world. He wanted to be a music teacher." The crowd remained perfectly still, hanging on every word. Elvis turned back to Margaret. "Darling, may I see that letter?" With shaking hands, Margaret unfolded Tommy's last letter home. Elvis read it silently, his lips moving slightly with the words. When he finished, he looked up at the ceiling, as if searching for something beyond the arena lights. "Tommy wrote in here that he wished he could thank me personally for the music," Elvis said to Margaret. "But I'm the one who needs to thank him. And you." He walked to his piano, the same one he'd played countless times, but tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt holy. "This song isn't on any of my albums," Elvis said to the crowd. "It's something I wrote years ago but never had the courage to sing. It's called A Mother's Love. I'm going to sing it for Tommy." What happened next would become legendary. Elvis sat at the piano and began to play a melody so beautiful, so heart-wrenching, that grown men in the audience began to weep. His voice, raw from emotion, carried every note like a prayer. A mother's love never dies, it just changes form. It lives in every smile, every dream, every storm. When the world grows cold and dark, that love remains the light. A mother's love never dies, it just burns more bright. But then came the moment that no one saw coming, the moment that would haunt Elvis for the rest of his short life. Share this video if you believe in the power of human connection, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. As Elvis sang, Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out something small and silver. It was a harmonica, dented and worn from years of use. She held it up to Elvis. "This was Tommy's," she whispered. "He carried it through Vietnam. Played your songs on it every night to remember home." Elvis stopped playing piano mid-song. The silence in the arena was deafening. He gently took the harmonica from Margaret's hands, holding it like it was made of glass. "He played my songs on this?" Elvis asked, his voice breaking again. Margaret nodded. "Every single night. The other soldiers used to gather around and listen. Tommy would play Love Me Tender and Can't Help Falling in Love. He said it reminded them all why they were fighting, for love, for home, for the music that makes life worth living." Elvis put the harmonica to his lips and played a few notes of Love Me Tender. The sound was imperfect, amateur, but it was the most beautiful music that arena had ever heard. "Tommy," Elvis spoke to the heavens, "this is for you, son." What followed was unlike anything in the history of rock and roll. Elvis played Tommy's harmonica while 23,000 people sang Love Me Tender together. Not screaming, not cheering, singing. Softly, reverently, like a hymn. Margaret stood beside Elvis, tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in 3 weeks, she was smiling. Her boy's harmonica was filling an arena with love. When the song ended, Elvis made a decision that would shock everyone, including himself. "Margaret, I want you to keep that harmonica. But I want to give you something too." He removed one of his signature rings, A gold band with a lightning bolt that he'd worn for years. "This is for Tommy. And for every mother who's lost a child to war, to accidents, to the unfairness of this world." He slipped the ring onto Margaret's finger. "You tell people that the king of rock and roll learned something from your boy tonight. I learned that music isn't about fame or money or sold-out arenas. It's about connection. It's about love continuing even after the person is gone." The arena erupted, not in screams or applause, but in something deeper. 23,000 people were crying together, healing together. Elvis looked out at his audience with new eyes. "From now on, every concert I do is for the Tommies of the world. For the mothers like Margaret. For everyone who's lost someone but still believes in love." The aftermath of that night would change Elvis forever, and what happened to Margaret will amaze you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that love never really dies. Margaret Williams became a regular at Elvis concerts. Not as a fan, but as family. Elvis called her Mama Margaret and would always save her a seat in the front row. She never missed a show within driving distance of Tennessee. After that night at the Mid-South Coliseum, Elvis established the Tommy Williams Memorial Music Fund, a scholarship program that sent underprivileged kids to music lessons. He donated the proceeds from 3 concerts to get it started. But the most incredible part came just weeks later. Margaret received a package at her home in Jackson. Inside was a guitar, Elvis's personal acoustic guitar, the one he'd used to write "Love Me Tender." Along with it was a note. "Mama Margaret, Tommy's dream was to teach music to children. I want you to start that school he dreamed about. Use this guitar to begin. Love never dies, it just finds new ways to sing. Your son, Elvis." Margaret did exactly that. She opened the Tommy Williams Music Academy in Jackson, Tennessee. Using Elvis's guitar as her first instrument, she taught dozens of children to play music. Many of those children went on to become professional musicians, carrying Tommy's dream forward. The harmonica that Tommy carried through Vietnam. Margaret had it bronzed and mounted in the music school's lobby. Underneath it, a plaque reads, "Music builds bridges between earth and heaven." Tommy Williams, 1954 to 1977. Elvis Presley died exactly 1 month later, on August 16, 1977. Margaret Williams was at his funeral, sitting with the Presley family. In her hands, she held 2 precious items, Elvis's lightning bolt ring, and her son's harmonica. The Memphis Press-Scimitar's obituary for Elvis mentioned that night at the Mid-South Coliseum as "the moment the king found his soul." Music historians now call it the most important performance Elvis ever gave, not because of the songs he sang, but because of the silence he created for grief, for love, for human connection. Today, the Tommy Williams Music Academy is still operating. Margaret passed away in 1995, but her last words to the staff were, "Keep playing Tommy's songs. Keep teaching Elvis's love." The Academy's graduation ceremony always ends the same way. Students play "Love Me Tender" on harmonicas, while the audience sings softly together. Just like that night in 1977 when the king of rock and roll learned that the greatest music comes not from fame, but from a mother's love that refuses to die. After Elvis's death, Margaret began wearing his lightning bolt ring to every community event in Jackson. When people asked about it, she would tell them Tommy's story and Elvis's kindness. Word spread quickly, and soon people from neighboring counties were coming to hear "the Elvis Ring Lady." The Jackson Sun ran a front-page article titled, "Mother's Grief Touches King's Heart." The story was reprinted across the South. Radio stations played Tommy's favorite Elvis songs and dedicated them to mothers who had lost children. Margaret approached the Jackson City Council with a request, establish an annual Music Heals Hearts festival in Tommy's honor. The city agreed immediately. By 1980, the festival had grown so large that it moved to the county fairgrounds. By 1985, it was attracting visitors from across the country. Musicians would come to perform for free, calling it an honor to play where Tommy's spirit lives. The festival continues today, now in its 47th year. Every August 16th, the anniversary of both Elvis's death and that fateful concert, thousands gather in Jackson to celebrate music's healing power. The opening ceremony always features the same ritual. Margaret's granddaughter, now carrying on the tradition, holds up Elvis's lightning bolt ring and tells the story of her grandmother, her Uncle Tommy, and the night the king of rock and roll learned what really mattered. The Tommy Williams Music Academy grew beyond Margaret's dreams. What started in Jackson now has branches in 12 states. Over 15,000 children have learned music through the program. Many became professional musicians and music teachers. The Academy's recording from 1990 captures Margaret, then 73, playing Tommy's harmonica one final time. In it, she speaks, "Tommy, baby, I'm sending this to you through Elvis. Tell him Mama Margaret says thank you for teaching me that love never ends, it just changes its song." Students at the Academy learn that music isn't about perfect notes or sold-out arenas. It's about connection, healing, and keeping love alive even when people are gone. Every graduation day, students receive a small harmonica and learn to play "Love Me Tender" as their final assignment. The legacy of that one night has now touched hundreds of thousands of lives across multiple generations. Margaret Williams died peacefully in 1995, Elvis's ring on her finger and Tommy's letter in her hand. But the ripples of that moment when the king of rock and roll stopped his concert for a grieving mother continue to spread, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of human kindness create the largest waves of change. Subscribe if you believe that music has the power to heal, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that love transcends everything, even death itself.